thank you, Professor Dugin, for your visit. And
thank you. Dear friends, as the final part of our geopolitical school, Balkanian Serbian geopolitical school experimental course, and that is based on the previous lecture courses that are already made by Mr. Savin, Mr. Bogdanov, Mr. Karovin. I presume that you have understood well the previous courses. They are necessary to understand this final metaphysical and philosophical summary of multipolar approach to understand the very essence of modern situation concerning cultures, civilizations, societies, globalizations, and the place of identity in this context. But Noology is the new philosophical discipline or approach developed by Romanian and Russian school of thought. There are two branches in Noology, Romanian one and Russian one. Romanian is represented by philosopher Lucian Blaga and his a kind of continuator, modern Professor Bazescu, and Russian Noology is completely different, but having the same sources of inspiration is developed in my person and my friends. I have published already 18 books of Noomachia, 18 volumes like that, more or less 800 pages each one. So that is a kind of already made work. It is not finished yet. I'm working on the 20th books now, but it will have 21, maybe 22 volumes in all. So that is the project that is based on the special philosophical metaphysical approach. I try to explain in this course, in the 10 lectures. They are very important because they are kind of summary of everything said and done before. So, excuse me, speaking English, but the problem is not only that we lack the qualified translator from Russian to Serbian, but there is a kind of new created terms as well in Russian. To Russian, understand Noomachia in Russian is difficult. To Serbia, it's almost impossible because the translation, nobody can make correct translation. If I would know Serbian well enough, I'd prefer to make this lecture in Serbian. But I doubt that there is someone beside myself that could make such philosophical translation. So excuse me for English in this course. But I could stop or return to the point if you miss something. You could ask if you don't understand the word, the term, important term. Ask myself or Bobana. We will try to translate in Serbian to find the correct term, because the philosophical terminology is not sufficiently developed neither in Russia nor in Serbia. So it is a kind of, we are always having in mind German or English or French words in order to transmit the concept. So that is a kind, I use English in conceptual way to transmit the concepts, not the terms of our native languages. So, first, we will have 10 lectures during these days, up to the Friday, 10 lectures. It's very important to be present, because if you miss something, you could never get what is going on in the next one. So, and today, we will have 2 lectures, introduction, but they are most important among all the others. So we need to concentrate today and to to try to put other concerns aside in order to concentrate on that. If you get that, you will understand, you will have the keys to open any intellectual doors in this course. If not, that will be the problem. So I invite you to concentrate. Thank you for your presence. Today, first lecture, introduction of what is noology. Noology. Noology is the new term, noology. Noology consists the term of two roots, two words. Nous, Greek word nous, and logic, logos, that is the science of teaching. So the noology is the teaching of nous. What is the nous in Greek? That is very, very serious word, and if you try to translate it, it is in Russian it could be in Russian. It is intelligence, intellect. It is as well mind, other soul, thought, мысль, thought. Or it could be a kind of consciousness. In German, Bewusstsein. Just something that lays at the depth of the human thought. But what is human? Human is the being that is different from any other beings in the world when one thinks. It is thinking being. So every other qualities we share with other beings. But thought is the same as to be human, to be thinking. Thinking creature, thinking being is human. So the thought is the human. To think is human. We have bodies, we have kind of instincts or some pains or suffering or joy, but the other creatures as well have the same. But nobody except us and the living world have thought. So the thought, or nous, is the essence of the man. The man is thought. All the rest is man, and not only. But the thought is the only aspect of man that makes us human. To be human is to be thinking. So the nous, as a kind of thought and mind, is the deepest root of human being, of humanness, of mankind. We are human because of thinking, because of nous. We are ourselves because there is the nous. Without nous, no human. Without no human, not us. So we are human because there is the nous. So thinking about the nous, noology, trying to explore noology, it's the same as to explore ourselves. It's not the kind of alienated object. To think about nous, it is the same as to think about us, about our deepest nature. It is not abstract, so it is a kind of introspection. We are speaking, we are learning our depth. So we are learning humanness of human beings. That is the nous. But we could present human being from different point of view, and noology present human being from one point of view, from its essential point of view. So it is the study of the thought as such. That is very, very important. And noology as well is philosophical basis of multipolarity. Why multipolarity? Because the idea of noology is that there is not only one kind of thinking, universal and common for all humanity, that there are differences. So when we try to study nous, the intellect, the mind, the thought, carefully, we discover how much the process of thinking depends on culture. If you are thinking in one culture, you think in one way. If you belong to the other culture, to the other ethnic group, to the other religion, to other age, you think completely differently. But you are still human, still Serbs, or Russian, French, or English, or Chinese, and African. But belonging to different cultures and spaces and times, you think differently. So if we want to study Nous and the thought as such, we need to take into account these differences. And without studying the differences of way of thinking, we could not arrive to the essence of thinking. For example, if we presume that everybody thinks as ourselves, so we will study our thought. But it is only part, because, for example, Croatians or Albanians, shifters, or Russians, or English, or American, or African, or Chinese, or Muslims, they think differently. Not only about secondary aspects, they think differently about the nature of human, about life, death, family, gender, history, time and space, about God, or a matter, world, about everything. So that is Noology. It is a kind of phenomenology of the mind. So we don't prescribe how the Nous should be, or what the thought should be, must be. We try to explore how it is, how thought works, presents itself in different contexts. And this recognition, the differences, without any prescription, normative prescription of how the man should normally think, that is the special feature of knowledge. So we are starting from the recognition of the differences, and we are trying to understand better and deeper the differences, not trying to unite or impose something as universal, but trying to discover. That is very important feature. That is why Noology is dedicated to study of the cultures, concrete cultures. And my books and the project of Noology, the most of them are dedicated for European culture, from French logos, from English logos, from Eastern European logos, for Russian logos, for American logos, for Chinese, Iranian, and so on. We are studying cultures, and basing on the cultures, we are reducing from these cultures their way of thinking. And only in that way we are arriving to have the complete vision of the human thought. Not we say human should be as, for example, modern European white atheist, materialist, liberal human being should be. So that is a concrete result of Anglo-Saxon or European civilization. It is geographically and historically limited, and it is not universal. It is English way of develop their history, English, American, European. And if we go to Eastern Europe, to Slav, to Russian, to Chinese, to Muslim world, we are discovering that they don't go that way. American or English or European, everybody goes its own ways. And there is the conflict of civilizations, as well the key to understand what is going on now with your country, with our country, how we are dealing with the West, how they treat us, why they treat us so and so, why we respond, why we resist, or why we submit. But the essence of Noology is recognition of the plurality of the of the minds of the cultures. And plurality means there is no only one universal normative way of development of mind. There are minds, not a mind. Or there is different manifestations of one mind, maybe, Nous, but so differently and so specially that we need to study carefully each case. Serbian case, Russian case, French case, German case, not to create hierarchy. It's more developed, it's less developed, but to understand how everybody thinks in different conditions. So that is knowledge. Noology is multi-level analysis. In Noology we are using philosophy. So the minimal knowledge of philosophy is necessary to understand what is going on, because the philosophy is the mirror of the thought. And studying philosophy, we are saving time to study the other politics, history, because in philosophy everything is in contact way. It is simultaneously presented in the philosophy. So if we are reading history of philosophy, we are reading the history of humanity. Why? Because to think is to be human. So, and philosophers consecrate all their life, all their efforts on thinking. So they are more human than others. They are more clear human than others. So they are making the same thing as everybody, but in a special way. They are concentrated on this humanness of human. And the other as well, they participated. So we could say that every man is philosopher. But the philosophers are complete men, accomplished men, perfect men. They are dedicated to the main goal of human to think. So they are. That is why philosophy is so important in Noology. History of religions. It's very important because religion is the other way to think. A religion is based on the premises of the thought. So without knowledge of different religions, at least little, small knowledge, but some knowledge, we could not understand Noology, because religion is as well the mirror of the thought. So there is projection of our thought on the gods, on the relations between the reason of being, the source of being, creation, gods, the time, and many other things are in the religion, are present in the religion that reflects the structure of Nous. So in Noology we need to know as well a little bit religion. What is very important, what is maybe new, in Noology, we need to have some knowledge of geopolitics, because geopolitics, it is concretization of civilization. So that is a kind of generalization. And if we discard geopolitical position of thinker, we could not understand what he means, because we are defined by philosophical tradition, by religious tradition, but we are as well defined our position in the world, our way of thinking. So our cultural knowledge is defined by our geopolitical position. If you belong to this civilization of the sea power, or civilization of the earth, you think differently. Earthly way, in the way of sea power, so that is very important difference. And position on the geopolitical map of the world is very important to interpret concretely the thought. So geopolitics is absolutely unavoidable. World history, its main topic. We need to know the history of different peoples and cultures. Basic knowledge of sociology, because sociology it is discipline that shows how much the way of our being is defined by society. So that is very important, because society is very important way of self-reflection, because if we know how much society and its principles is inside us, so we will discover that our individuality, our originality is almost zero, is almost inexisting quantity. Everything in us is put by the society. Every our ideas, we think, I'm thinking that. It is not I that thinks, that society through me thinks. That sociology is very important. Anthropology, and above all the new anthropological school from Franz Boas and Claude Levi-Strauss and the other tradition. And I suggest that in development of our course, we absolutely need to have a kind of anthropological course about anthropology. It is very important part. And modern anthropology shows how ethnical tradition and condition of the living in the nature and the culture and in the balance between the nature and culture defines the values of the society and how different the society are. That is very important gain of modern anthropology. Old anthropology of 19th century was based on the evolutionary theory. So everybody is developing, there are developed society and underdeveloped society. Modern anthropology shows there is no such things as development. There are differences, and in order to study archaic society, we could discover the society more complicated and more complex than our society. But they are different. They are not underdeveloped. They are not childish stage of the same culture. That is maybe mature, maybe childish, maybe old stage of different culture that we need to study carefully without projecting our own ideas on them. That is the gain of modern anthropology. That is one of the main principles of Noology and Noomachia. There is ethnosociology that put together ethnology and sociology. You had a course already about ethnosociology. It's very important and key course. The theory of imagination. I would suggest strongly you to read the books of Carl Gustav Jung, but Gaston Bachelard, but above all Gilbert Durand, French author, about sociology of imagination. That is very important. It will be used, his methods and his teachings will be used in our course as a kind of methodological basis. I will explain in short terms what is sociology of imagination of Gilbert Durand. I have made doctorate on that, of sociology of imagination, and it will be of use. So, phenomenology. I recommend you to study Heidegger and Husserl. The most important idea of phenomenology, that the thing we are thinking of exists in our mind. All the quality of the things belong to our mind. So what the thing is beyond our mind is something we could guess. There is no evidence, no quality. It's almost nothing. Or, for example, existence or not existence of the thing outside of our perception changes absolutely nothing in our relations with the things. That is the main law of phenomenology. So the things are present inside of our thought, in our thinking process. That is the main law of phenomenology developed by Edmund Husserl and Martin Heidegger and other philosophers of the same line. So structuralism. the structuralism of Ferdinand de Saussure, Levi-Strauss, Paul Ricoeur. It's very important as well because structuralism, that is philosophical method that explains that everything exists in the structures. So structure is something invisible, but that defines the meaning. So the language is much more important than the discourse or the things are said in that language. The language predefines what we are going to say. So what we are saying, it is citations from the language, from the dictionary. So our speech that we are so proud of, thinking that is something completely original. Let's go to the cinema, for example. We say as if it is the, let's be the world, let's be the light, let's God's announcement from nothing, from the void, but it is the mostly, it is a pure citation of the many other men and women say to each other, let's go to the cinema. So that is citation, and that is defined by the structure of the language. There is nothing, zero originality in that. So, and with all our judgments the same, all our words and the discourses, we are repeating the things that were said many times, that millions and millions times before us, by the other, and that is no author. There is repetition of the structure. That is the language that speaks by itself. That is the concept of structuralism, the philosophy of structuralism. Very interesting and very important methodological aspect for where that we use in Noomachia. As well, I suggest reading Heidegger as in fourth political theory. I suggest reading traditionalist philosopher of the school of René Guenon and Julius Evola. They are very important. I suggest reading Bachofen about the gender and the matriarchy. It's very important because the study of matriarchy is the essential part of Noology. I will explain why. So Bachofen has written the book that is called Mutterrecht, the law of mother, Mutterrecht, and that is classical book about how pre-Indo-European Mediterranean matriarchate was. So that is very important, and it is basic and classical work. As well, structuralist author Georges Dumezil, we will mention him, and Claude Levi-Strauss, as I have said, about modern structuralism and anthropology and ethnology. So that there are more or less the kind of fields or methods of schools we are using in knowledge. But there are many studies, disciplinary studies of such kind, so there is nothing new or nothing concrete on all everything I have just said. And what is originality of Noomachia as such? And that is the most important point. All that, all the mentioned disciplines and methods and the field of studies are auxiliaries. So they help us to understand. They are tools. But what is the main method? The main method is the concept that is this time it is something new, partly new, and I will explain why. About existence of three logos. Three logos. What is three logos? So my idea is that the Nous as a thought or mind or intellect manifests itself in three distinguished, different forms. In three. No or less, no more. In three forms. That is approximation, as any any methodological approach. But that is what the French call grille de lecture. That is a kind of reading. If we accept that, everything will be put in the context of this methodological approach. So, one mind and three forms, three major forms, with many sub divisions, many other forms included in these main global general forms of the process of the thought that I am calling logos. So there is one nous and three logos. How logos relate, three logos and each of them relate to the nous, we put out of the questions. That is too metaphysical. It's not so important for us. So the most important idea that the nous cannot manifestate itself without passing through these three logos. There is no thought beyond, outside of these three logos. But these three logos we could find in any culture. They have no destiny for one of them. There is no hierarchy between these three logos. And we find all three logos necessary in any kind of culture. So that is the result of my work, the result of the studies, of the researches. So that I started from the of hypothesis that we will find them in any culture, maybe not. And after studying any culture in the world, including most archaic one in Oceania, in Africa, and Indian of Southern and Northern America, I have arrived to the point where this hypothesis was confirmed. So in any culture, in any society, archaic or modern, or postmodern, or new, European, not European, in any time, in any form of society, we could discover these three logos in different proportions, in different balance. They could be combined in many ways, in million ways. And that is dynamic. I will explain how they are changing this balance of the logos, but they are present everywhere. So no culture, no people, no religion, no region could say we have this logos and only this, or these two. Everybody has three logos, every culture. So that is very important. And that shows that we could not construct the hierarchy between the culture or people, because the three logos, they combine with each other in completely special way, and the way of combination is proper to each culture. So that is a kind of our history, our identity, deep identity of the people, of the culture, of the religion, consists precisely in this combination and the changes of the balance of these three logos. So because there are so many forms to combine them, so there are unlimited possibilities of the human society, and no way to create hierarchy, because the archaic society can be with domination of one logos and modern with other, and vice versa. So there is no general rule that could be universal. And that is a very important point, because that shows that we are dealing in our science, in our methodology, in our politics, in our culture, with kind of racist colonial approach. In any culture, we just projecting our own logos as something universal. So, but the careful study of the culture shows that that is illegitimate procedure. That there is the racism. It's the basic idea to say my logos or my special culture is universal. So that is, and without studying the other, without asking the other. And after that, after declaring that our culture is universal one, so we put ourselves as example for the other. And the other are other the same as ourselves or less developed. And that is the case of modern European civilization and of us in the way we belong to it. If we accept that, we are entering in this racist attitude toward the history, toward the past, toward ourselves. And we are declaring that is universal, that is the only way to development, and everybody is going that way. So there is only one culture, one logos, our. And our logos is universal and the measure of the things. That is completely wrong. That is based on exaggeration of our own self. And that is something I will show that is completely illegitimate. And there is not only open biological racism, modern liberalism, communism, any kind of globalization are absolutely racist because they are basing on the universalism of the historic experience of the part of the humanity, put as the whole of the humanity, as the goal, for example. Who is in the eyes of globalists African, like Nigger? He is the man on the way to be white, modern, capitalist, liberal, European, Eurocentric man. So he is a kind of underdeveloped European. He is not the representative of the culture going its own way. It's something that is on delay. And modern idea of tolerance, that we need to tolerate him precisely as a handicapé, as we need to tolerate him and something unperfect, something invalid, something on the way to be as ourselves. And that is completely racist. We don't recognize the other as complete and perfect human being, different than us. We think that they are going right way, our way, and they are obliged to be. There is no other way. So we have pity on them. And there is very nice film of Werner Herzog, where Green Ants Dream. He shows that the people of Australia, they not only cannot follow Western example. They don't want to do that. They are going their own way, different from Western, and that is their decision of their culture. And that this clash of Anglo-Saxon racist version of the history and this Aborigine Australian vision of their own identity. They are not incapable. They are not the Westerner of the second sort. They are Australian of the first sort for themselves. And that is I would say, ethical aspect of Noology. Noology, it is a fight for the human dignity for any society, without hierarchy and without this projection. It is the basis of anti-colonial metaphysics. And many teachings pretended historically to be anti-colonial, Marxism and liberalism as well, but they were based on the universal version of the history. For Marxism, we need to develop African society in order to make them socialist, and they will be equal. But destroying their values, their system, and regarding them as anti-developed and their natural state. The same for liberalism. So liberalism, communism are in the same way they racist as racism of Hitlerism. That is for main basis for political theory, that we need to find some other way outside of three political ideologies. And Noology is the metaphysical basis why it is so needed. Because doing differently, treating the other people differently, we are projecting our racist approach, and we are making equation between ours and normative and universal. But that is the violation of the truth. It's pure colonialist struggle for power, and not understanding, not knowledge, not wisdom, not the truth. It's something completely different. So that is why Noology is so important. It's the philosophical and metaphysical basis of multipolar world, and three logos, the concept of three logos shows the differences, that could exist in the combination and in different culture. Now, what these three logos are? Here we could remind Nietzschean concept of Apollo, the Greek god Apollo, and Dionysus, the Greek god Dionysus. So Apollo, Dionysus. Two Greek gods, but Friedrich Nietzsche, has interpreted them not as the object of cult or worship. They were taken as metaphor, as a kind of symbols, figures. So you should not be worshipper of Apollo to be Apollonian. You should not be worshipper of Dionysus and participate in the orgies in order to be Dionysian. To be Dionysian or Apollonian for Nietzsche was completely different, had completely different meaning. To be Apollonian, for them to be hierarchically, to belong to the logical way to understand the world, and to be Dionysian, to be irrational, intuitive understanding of the world. There is a kind of way of thinking in Nietzsche. It is Apollonian, daily way of thinking, and there is night way of thinking. In the night, in the dawn, dusk, that is Dionysian. So, and Nietzsche divided the culture in Apollonian one and Dionysian one. So the cultures for Nietzsche were of two kinds. That was taken from Nietzsche and developed by many other authors. Now it is almost commonplace in the history and the study of culture study. Dionysian and Apollonian. We say Dionysian style, the Apollonian style, following Nietzsche, but going further. And I accept that, and I think that we could affirm that there is the logos of Apollo, and there is the logos of Dionysus. Logos, so the Nous, the mind, the thought, expresses itself through Apollonian or Dionysian logos. That is very important. That sounds like Nietzschean approach, and it is, because I am inspired by Nietzsche in that way. I have trying to discover Dionysian logos more. I have written the kind of prequel for Noomachia theory that is called In the Search of the Dark Logos. My idea was to regard the history of philosophy and not from Apollonian point of view that is prevailing, that is dominating, that is almost unique, we know, but from the other, from the second logos. So create a kind of construct the history of philosophy basing of Dionysian reading. So how, for example, we know exactly, perfectly, how Apollonian reading of the history of philosophy is. That coincides with the history of philosophy itself, always. And when we know what Apollo thought, because the history of philosophy is Apollonian thought. So Apollo thought precisely as a philosopher thought during the ages. And my idea was to discover how Dionysus would think the same topics, the same categories, the same opposition and relations. That was as well kind of invitation of Nietzsche, a little bit of Heidegger, and many postmodern thinkers tried to do the same, tried to apply this Dionysian approach in order to decipher, to read the history of philosophy. So it is not so unique as well. But I tried by myself. And working on this, search of dark logos, I have called it dark logos because that what is clear for me that Apollonian logos is light one. It's common sense, I would say. So the Apollo is light. Dionysus is night or shadow or darkness. So going into the field of these dark logos and trying to read with the eyes of dark logos, Hegel, Heidegger, Kant, Plato, Aristotle, Schelling, and the other, and all that is described more or less in my book, In the Search of Dark Logos, that is prequel, the 0 volume of Noomachia. In the kind of field research in the metaphysics, not from the with a kind of idea that I had before, but working with this task to to imagine the alternative history of philosophy based on Dionysian approach, I have discovered in the practical way very important and key moment that was basis of all Noomachia. There are some phenomena, including in culture, in religion, in philosophy, in the history of philosophy, in science, in art, in human psychology, in unconsciousness, that could not be, that could not enter in the field of Dionysian logos. So something fits, but there is new field that is outside, that could not fit into the Apollonian logos, clearly, but that could not fit as well into the Dionysian logos. That was a kind of practical discovery, empirical discovery, I would say, in the field of metaphysics, because there were some conceptual field, for example, the philosophy of Heraclitus or Democritus, atomic theory, or the theory of modern science. They are not Apollonian, absolutely, but they are not Dionysian, in no way. They are not absolutely Dionysian. And searching dark logos, I have arrived to the point that there is something outside of these two logos. There is the third one. So, behind the logos of Dionysus was hidden something else. Something that was in the shadow of the Dionysus. If Dionysus is the shadow of Apollo. But there is the other shadow of the shadow. And that I have called, in my studies, the logos of Cybele. Cybele, it is the name for very ancient Anatolian goddess, Cybele. The same as Rhea, Greek Rhea, Cybele. That's the name. That was the name of the mother goddess of Anatolia, ancient Anatolia. It was before Hittites. Before Hittites, there was the very special pre-Indo-European people of Hat. And Hittites in the European language has taken this goddess and integrated in their own religious context. And after that, the Phrygian, they have as well and developed the cult of the Cybele. And that was very interesting circle of the concept basing on the ritual castration of the man and the rule of the Great Mother. So the priests of Cybele were castrated and turned into the eunuch. So that was the emasculation of the man. And that was the part of the great vision of matriarchy, when the position of the man is completely different that we know. It is completely different that Dionysian position, because Dionysus in his cult is the center of attraction of the backhands, of the women, but as well of the men. But that is a kind of that is the presence of the man in the center of the human existence. What is Dionysus? He is not transcendental, Dionysus. He is immanent, but he is man. That is immanence of the man, a man God. The God as a man, not human. And this presence, it is kind of immanent presence of transcendence. So that is not the darkness. Dionysus is not the darkness. It is not black logos. It is the presence of the light in the darkness. So that is a kind of sun of the night. That is Dionysus. That is the man inside, in the middle of the immanent, chthonic, feminine existence. So that is the male point in female reality. That is a kind of ray of the sun that goes through the darkness and that comes to the center of the darkness in order to create new dawn. So that is the Dionysus. And it could not be identified with darkness, with chaos, and all the orgies, and all the rites and worships, and all the topics linked to Dionysus were not so easy to interpret. That is not reversal of the normal Apollonian order. It is not, that was not kind of revolution. Dionysus, it is the same as Apollo, but coming not in the day, but in the night. That it was the male in the night, the light in the darkness, but in the darkness. So, and it is a kind of sun that comes down in the evening in order to appear anew in the morning. But when he passes the moment of midnight, he is invisible, he is hidden, there is no sun in the middle of the night. But the sun is. If he will be absolutely absent, there will be no morning, no dawn. It is not the day, but it is the sun of the night, not the sun of the day. The sun of the day, it is the same as Evola or Helios. But the sun, where is the sun? Where is no sun? Where is the heaven when there is no heaven? Where is the male when there is no male, no man? Only darkness, the earth, immanence, and matter, and female principle. So, but he is hidden, but he is. That is Dionysian logos. It's very special. He creates a new kind of vision, of dynamic vision, a kind of balance of the genders and of metaphysics, the balance of the transcendence and immanence of the heaven and the earth. It is the heaven in the earth, and that is heavenly earth, the earth in the heaven. So that is the combination of opposition, that's dialectics. That is Dionysian logos. So, but in order to understand correctly what is the logos of Dionysus, we need to introduce third logos, and that is something that changes completely all the other concepts and theories that existed before, and that principles or tools of modern culture, the history of cultures and culturology. So the third logos, I have discovered that is new. That is absolutely new. That is the kind of essential feature of Noology, that there is the third logos, the black one, the logos of Cybele. The logos of Cybele is, and why it was discovered so late? Why everybody before didn't speak about the same, about the logos? That was so logical. But when I started to try to understand, to solve this problem, the physical problem, I have discovered a very interesting thing, that for the logos of, dominating logos of Apollo, this logos cannot exist. Because seeing the situation from the purely Apollonian point of view, that could not be the other logos with, beyond the Apollonian one. Because the Apollonian concept is exclusivist, male purely, and based on the kind of equivalence. The man as male is a man is human. So there is man, and to be man and to be human is the same. So, and everything that doesn't fit into this concept has no right to pretend to be called logos. So logos is Apollo, man, and human. And everything that is not male, female for example, that is not logical, that doesn't belong to logos, doesn't belong to human, that is a kind of beast or something, an object, not the subject. Subject could be only Apollonian. So, and the Nietzschean idea to enlarge the concept of logos and to give the status of logos to Dionysus was already revolution, because that has shown that it could be different approach to the logos. So that was crucial, absolutely. And with Dionysus, and we have discovered that there could be Apollonian approach, and that could be other approach. But together, Apollonian approach and Dionysian approach, they could not let the third logos to be, because both of them, they are male. Open as Apollonian, or kind of a bit hidden as Dionysian, exclusive as Apollonian, or inclusive as Dionysian, but they are male logos. And the logos of Cybele is not male. And from the male prevailing point of view, it could not be logos. So it passes without being remarked. So it is a kind of something, a kind of noise. It is not word, that is not speech. For the males, metaphysical males, ears, what the woman says is noise. It's not the speech. Something as the sound of the nature, for example. Beautiful, less beautiful, that depends. So, but that is idea that in the Apollonian and Platonic, for example, Platonism is purely Apollonian philosophy. There are ideas, they are above, there is images, icons, they are below, so there is verticality, there is that Father, that is eternal example, paradigm, there is the Son, that is a kind of phenomenological imitation of the Father, and nothing, hora, matter, that has no quality. And the most important definition of Apollonian approach to the Logos, that beyond the Logos, nothing. Beyond Father, or Son, or matter that has no quality, so nothing, not being. Darkness. Without quality, not Logos, but what is important, not Logos. There is the Logos of the Father, that is Apollonian. There is the Logos of the Son, immanent, that is the Logos of Dionysus. And there is no Logos. Because we are completely machist. We are patriarchal tradition. So we don't let the other part of the reality to have Logos. So we deny that. And that is why it was so hidden. And only starting to apply or to create, to describe a kind of approach to Dionysian history of philosophy, we discover there is something below the lower border of Dionysian vision. Because Dionysian approach is not the castration, it is not the kind of dissolution in the Great Mother. It is the reach, the depth of the hell in order to resurrect Dionysian idea, to descend in order to ascend, to go down in order to go back to the heaven. So it is the sacrifice, it is the death, but in order to be resurrected. It's completely different. It is going from the top to the bottom in order to return to the top. So Dionysus, it is the extreme version of Apollonian Logos. That is different completely. It creates different structure. So that is the other inclination of Nous. Maybe the Nous is the same, but the form is completely different. But starting to work with Dionysian Logos seriously, I have discovered that there is something else. And that was a kind of discovery, metaphysical discovery, that first of all that was a kind of illumination, revelation, philosophical sense, but that after thinking about that, I have arrived to the point that we could instrumentalize that. So we could go beyond the Apollonian and Dionysian border and recognize this attitude as the Logos, as third form of the Nous, or the third Logos, the Logos of Cybele. The Logos of Cybele, and after that everything comes into the harmony. So after that we have a complete explanation of all the possible versions of cultures, of philosophy, of religions, and relations between them. So we could imagine how the Nous is divided in three rays. The in the three rays and three logos. And these three logos, each one of them, creates a world or the worlds by itself. So we can live in many Apollonian worlds, in many Dionysian worlds, and we could live in many Sibyllian worlds. There is not only one world. There are multitude, multiplicity, plurality of Apollonian worlds, the Dionysian worlds, and Sibyllian worlds. And they are embedded in each other, they are merged in each other, and they represent so rich content of the cultures, of the thought, of the art, of the history, that we discover immediately the spiritual treasury of the human mind. But it is not the chaos. That is a kind of inner relations between them. Because we could describe a pure forms of these three laws. For example, what is the universe of Apollo? It is idea that everything is created from above from the top to the bottom. Top, bottom line. Everything is a kind of descending process. Platonic philosophy is so actual and was always absolutely actual because it is the most perfect form to express this Apollonian logos. Platonism is the same as Apollonian logos. So, in any kind of logos of Apollo, in any culture, having the context with Greek Platonism or having no kind of culture, no context with Platonism, will create the same Apollonian version. I have discovered, for example, that in the Nilo-Saharan people of Africa, with no links with Greece in the very archaic tradition. So, logos of Apollo, but they did exactly the same idea. There is the Father God that has created everything, and the people are the sons of the Father God, and we are descending from the heaven, and we are returning to that. There is no earth dimension of that. The earth is the lowest line of this going down in order to get back. So there is, with a pure patriarchal attitude, everything is based on the honor, on the fight, the fight against the death. Death is darkness. That every man is a light man. That is a kind of hierarchy inside of society based through this line. So that is Platonic, European, feudal, traditional Serbian, Russian vision of the society. By the Shilluk, by the Nuer, by the Dinka tribes of Nilo-Saharan people, or for example the other African people of Western Africa, and Yoruba people, we have the same Platonist vision, purely Platonist, with sometimes with the same kind. There are the kind of examples existing in the stars, and all that we're dealing with are the reflections or the phenomenological mirrors of what is going among the stars. So there is Platonism that is not only in the texts or dialogues of Plato. There is Apollonian logos. It is, they had no contact with Plato. It's impossible. They have, for example, pharaonic tradition of Egypt. That was as well the sun from above, from the top, and that goes down and create the kind of this pyramidal version of the world. So there is everything. The basis is square, and the top is unity. So there is purely Apollonian building, pyramid. That is why the fire was presented in Plato as pyramids. So pyre, it's fire in Greek. So pyramid, it is a kind of fire that goes to the top. That is, and the fire. So fire is sacred, and light is sacred, and we are sons of the light. And from this point, the patriarchy, the absolute domination of male principle and submission of the female principle, and all Apollonian things. So the logos of Apollo is not people who read Plato and people who have applied the texts of Plato to their society. Partly that was the case, but we could not explain any Apollonian society with reading of Plato. Plato was the pot. I will explain in the future lectures how what was concretely the Plato philosophy. But what is important now, that Apollonian logos is logos. It is not Platonic. Plato is reflection or mirror of this logos. It is excellent form to express it. It is perfect art or revelation of this logos in the most complete form. So it is the best introduction in the Apollonian logos, but that is not creation of Plato. It is creation of Nous. It is the way how the Apollonian logos in Nous works and how it reveals, manifests itself. That is very important. There is no artificial creation of some human mind. Human mind can be, following the Apollo's line, can be Platonic. And Platonic in something, we are born with Platonism. So we could be inner born Platonists if we are these logos dominate in us, in our culture, in our religion, in our system of values. So there is something that we could, and that defines our world. We see the heights, and we regard the heaven more than earth. So we are light. We are not. We have no weight. We worship the winged creatures and angels, for example, or birds, or our gods are transparent. They live in the air, or in the heaven, or in the clouds. So that is completely for us traditional. Christian in the European tradition, it's Apollonic. And Plato was the part of this culture. All the Greek culture, almost all, was before Plato and after Plato, and not only Greek and Roman and Iranian and Indian and Slavic tradition. All these traditions were Apollonian. And for us, it's so clear that we think that the world is such. There is no other world. But we are living in the Apollonian world. Our tradition is based on Apollonian vision. And the discovery of the logos of the Dionysus, it's already spiritual metaphysical revolution. It could be different. We could live in different worlds with different symmetry, with different organization, not based from on the worship of the transcendence. We could see this sacredness in the immanence. So Dionysian world is organized differently, with different meaning of the same words, of the same figure, of the same gods. This Dionysian aspect in Christian tradition, we will speak about that more, is the figure of Christ. That is the God and the man. He is transcendental, transcendent, and he is immanent. He is eternal, as in an Apollonian world, everything is eternal in essence. And he is historic, so he came into the time. So if we regard in this way, so we don't oppose Apollonian Christianity or to, for example, to Dionysian paganism. We understand better that in the same tradition in Christianity we could we have both figures: transcendence of the Trinity, of the God, and the immanence of the Christ. So we have Apollonian and Dionysian aspect in very special situation. In other tradition, we discover the same. There are many other in different traditions that figure as Dionysus. Not it's clear, not with the same name, but with the same function, with some ecstatic liberation, because the name of Dionysus in Roman culture was liberation, freedom. So this liberation from the weight of the matter, from this chthonic aspect of human presence, and that is the kind of leap into the freedom of God. It is to the leap from the human to divine, from the time into the eternity. That is the essence of the Dionysian cult. It is a kind of Eucharisty in our Christian tradition. So we are in time and with bodies. We are coming in the touch with the eternal, that is God. This is a kind of metaphysical, anthropological, ontological leap. So that is the essence of Dionysian tradition, and that is not the case that the Eucharisty in our church is made with the wine, with the blood of God, and with the grain, because the bread and wine were two symbols of Eleusinian mystery, where Dionysus and Demetra were in the center of that. So that is continuation of the special symbolical tradition based on Dionysus and Apollo. And when we see the world through the logos of Dionysus, we have one world. If we see the world with in the logos of Apollo, we are dealing with different world, and there are different symmetries, different metaphysics. For example, Dionysus is the cycle. It is a kind of cycle around the point of eternity, and Apollonian logos is eternity itself. It is eternity. So we are going from eternity and are returning to the eternity. That is what most important in the Apollonian idea. From then, in everlasting law, the tradition, that something should not be changed. The eternity of the ethic, of the cult, that is the belief in their eternity that pretend to be eternal itself. So that is something eternal that is outside of the process of the time. And the time was not important. The only time of the return is important. So the only time that is important in the case of the Apollonian is the return to the eternity, because the time itself, the reflection, as Plato says, it is reflection, mirror of eternity. So the ethics of Apollonian logos is return the reflection to the reflected object. That is idea, that is the archetype, paradigm, or eternity. And the world we are living defined by Apollo, the logos of Apollo, is precisely based on some consumption, on some idea. For example, that we are using, for example, the words in our speech as if the essence of them were eternal. So we don't name any time the different but similar things with new names. We say this book, this book, all that are books. And books exist, books as concept exist eternally. That is eternal books, and in our religion it is a kind of pure projection. There is the Bible as eternal book that was created, written in the eternity. Everything is eternal, everything in the book, and the book is eternal. So every name we mention is eternal in itself. It was always existed at the time of Adam. So that is a kind of Apollonian world that is very famous for us. It is the Apollonian world. We think the world is Apollonian in our traditional education. We are educated in the Apollonian culture. We are dealing with logos and with logic. But logic of Aristotle is based precisely on the laws of the eternity. He says A is A, or if there is no A, that's the second law, and or A or not A, third law of logic. But in the world around us, there is no such things. Everything is double. Something exists and not exists, dies and is born. So in the physics, there is no logic. Logic is something that describes Apollonian world. The world that we take for granted, we are dealing with, but that doesn't exist. It is kind of revelation. Logic is a revelation. The A is A. Only God is God. Everything is some half created by God, half nothing. So everything, there is no point in the universe where the A is A. A is equal to the A. Never, nowhere. So only God is God. That was logic. Is something that is for us so natural. It's something absolutely transcendental. It is the essence of Apollonian logos that is working inside of our brain. It's because it is working inside of our culture, forming the semantical axis, the paradigm of our way of thinking. That is logos of Apollo. So what is the logos of Dionysus? That is interesting. When we staying in Aristotle, we are coming to the other branches of his description of the sciences. We're discovering that, for example, dealing with physics, Aristotle says that everything, he didn't use the word thing in as rare Latin. He used the concept on something that is being, essence. So this is double. So has form and matter, and that is anti-logical concept. That unity is double. Something that is unique is always, everything that exists is double. You see one thing, but in the reality there are two things in one thing: matter and form. And if you separate them, there is nothing. So you could not. That is Aristotelian physics. That is completely different Dionysian approach to the world, and it is described not by the logic, but it is described by the rhetoric, because it is one, but not exactly one, not as in the logic one, because there is double. There is two things in one thing: the form and the matter. And Dionysian way of thinking, Dionysian logic, logos, is manifested by the capacity to think dialectically, to conceive one thing as two things at the same time, one and two. But in the logic, or one or two. But in Dionysian world, no, one and two. There is not here man, here woman. One and one, two. No, there is androgyne. Androgyne is something that is not a kind of sum of man and woman. It is not addiction. We are taking man, we're adding woman, there is androgyne. No. There is something that precedes in Dionysian logos to existence of male and female. The androgyne is not the result of combination. That is the source of the gender. And that is not Apollonian way to think. That's Dionysian way. Androgyne is the figure of Dionysus. So there is the two in one before there is two. There is in the middle, in the center, before there are poles. For example, in Apollonian world, there is one pole, there is other pole. And what is between is the secondary. It's defined by limits, by poles. And Dionysian worlds is something completely different. There is what is between, and its projections create poles. So, and we could live in the world, in the culture, in the religion of dialectical Dionysian approach. The two nature in Christ, they are God and man. It is something that is irrational for the Dionysian version. Or how it could be the same and not the same, for example, in the Holy Trinity. So there are kind of dialectical approach that that creates completely new symmetry in religion, in art, in the philosophy. And this Dionysian logos is possible, but it is presented much more than in the philosophy, in poetry, in sacred, in art, in language, not in the mathematical language, but in the human language, in rhetoric, not in the logic. Logic is Apollonian, rhetoric is Dionysian, because the rhetoric is precisely violation of the laws of the logic. What is rhetoric? When we use some rhetorical formula, we try to violate, for example, to give the part as a whole. It is metonymia, and the other. All the figures of rhetorics are based on these Dionysian logos, and that is why literature, art, poetry, and the other mythology, rather than philosophy, is the privileged field of the Dionysian logos. And that is not the lesser logos. That is important. In Plato has said, let's put all the poets out of our ideal state. Because it is Apollonian understanding of what is Dionysian. Apollo thinks that Dionysus is a kind of sub-Apollo, something that is would be Apollo, something incomplete. It is a little bit Apollonian ethnocentrism, Apollonian racism. He thinks that he himself is the whole, and all the rest is parts of himself or kind of images, sometimes perverted. So Plato said, let's put poets and mythologists out of our purely philosophical Apollonian state, because they belong to the world of Dionysus. And they have no place in the Apollo Republic. Plato's Republic, it's Apollo's Republic. They should be put out. And because they are considered to be impure because they are rhetoric. They are dealing with inclination, not with the straight line, but with the curves. They are dealing with a combination of the structured elements in a very, very fantastic way. And that is the kind of creative spirit of the art that is Dionysian. But as well we could find in art Apollonian line, but the majority of the art and the poetry is purely Dionysian. And that is the realm of the immanence and of rhetoric. And there could be the philosophy of Dionysian style. In the modern philosophy, phenomenology is purely Dionysian. Heidegger tried, and I have discovered finally, studying many years Heidegger, that Heidegger tried to create Dionysian philosophy. He tried and he succeeded in that. That he developed this phenomenological aspect, and his concept of Dasein is purely Dionysian, is immanence, is a kind of immanence that is before, that should be regarded not as a kind of, in Apollonian way, a kind of projection of Dasein, of the being. The being, it's Apollonian, but Dasein, T/here being, or in Serbian, tu biće, Dasein in Serbian. But what is interesting that in German, da, it is not there, tu, tamo. It's not, da is not here, not there. Neither tu nor tamo. But in between. Da is in between. Not here, not there. In between. And in all the Slavonic language, there was form that is conserved in present Serbia. Ovde biće. Ovde neither tu nor tamo. Ovde. Between. So Dasein is being not there, not here, but in between. In between, because there and here we could strictly define without us. But between, it is precisely the point where the Dionysus is. Dionysus is in between, of them. He is not there as Apollo. He is not here as something immanent. He is in between, always in between, in the middle. So Dasein is very Dionysian term in itself. Of the biće. Neither tamo biće, nor tu biće, of them. In Russian we have lost of this third form of this grammatical form, and that is maybe it's kind of luck that in Serbian you have conserved of this name in your language in order to understand better Heidegger, in order to understand better this Dionysian possibility of philosophy, to think not from the top, not from the neither from the bottom, but from the middle, nor from the two poles, and after there is something that is center. No, thinking from the center, from between, and trying to express the idea of Heidegger in English. Sometime the philosopher translate that as such: T/here being. So not there, not here, because they have no of. Poor English have no of, as your rich sir. So the idea is that third logos, and more fascinating is third logos. I think that already to compare two logos, Apollo and Dionysus, in full measure, will so revelating for create not one history of philosophy, but two versions. So you could consult not only Apollonian bookshelf, but as well Dionysian. And if we apply this method, we will be not obliged to write all these volumes anew, but we could make a kind of combination of existed works, of existed philosophical and religious tradition, and to reorganize our intellectual space, to rebuild, to reshape our understanding of the history of the philosophy, and the history of philosophy is the history of our society and history of humanity. So, the next point of Noology, that we could find the logos of Apollo and the logos of Dionysus in any culture as well. So every people, every culture knows all these two logos. It's very important. So there is no people of Apollo, a people of Dionysus. There are logos of Apollo and Dionysus in any human culture. But if we remark their relations, they are not so good relations, because Apollo thinks in one, he creates this world with verticality, with this symmetry, patriarchal symmetry. And, for example, he put out poets or Dionysian. There is a kind of fight between two logos. One, Nous, two logos. And they fight against each other. We are approaching why Noomachia? Because Noomachia, it is the fight of the Nous, or the fight inside of the Nous. But the really dramatical aspect, all this obtains when we come to the third logos. Because there is the third new world, creates not from the top to the bottom, not from the center, but from the bottom to the top. New symmetry, and this is lost logos. Logos lost and denied by both, by logos of Apollo and logos of, in the lesser scale, by the logos of Dionysus. And what could be such a universe, such a world created on this symmetry, on this logos of Cybele? The world of Cybele, the logos of Cybele, it is the mother, great mother, that creates everything from herself. That is very important. That is absence of any male principle outside of the great mother. It's absolute inclusiveness. So there is nobody, but there is no God but the great mother. There is nobody but the great mother. There is only great mother Earth that creates everything from herself and kills everything. Because she is at the same time the tomb and the cradle, колыбель, and the tomb, могила. So she is at the same time. There is no 2 point of life. There is one and the same point of death and life. There is no, for example, the goddess of death and the goddess of life. There is only one goddess, only one mother that creates, gives life and kills. So she creates the son, the male principle, from herself without father. She uses it as a lover and she emasculates, castrates, and kills it, and make it revival once more. So that is Sibyllian myth. That is explained in the many forms, many cults and many worship, but there is a kind of philosophy inside that is very interesting and very profound philosophy. There is no transcendence at all. There is no heaven. The heaven are a kind of mirror of the earth. So any kind of heaven are only reflection of the same, of the matter. And we are coming to absolute materialistic immanence, because immanence of Dionysus was not materialistic, was spiritualist immanence. It was almost always in the middle, half spirit, half matter. And this half is before. It's not the sum, but before, that exists before the matter and the spirit. And the Great Mother, and the logos of Great Mother, is the idea that Great Mother creates and kills everything. And it is not the eternity or the cycle. It is something that is going in its way with the blind and absolute power. So there is a kind of progress that is the growth from the bottom to the top. It is a kind as well, in the Apollonian way, is titanic battle of the Chthonian powers and forces directed against the heaven and the rule of the male logos of Apollo. So, Sibyllian logos is completely, it is the third creation of the new world that is titanic, chthonic, and feminist in some way. Not because there is equivalence between man and woman. That is much more Dionysian. But that is absolute domination of the mother over everything else. So, we will follow this later in order to conclude this first lecture. What is important? That three logos I have explained, stay in the absolute fight, because they create the world, the system, the society, the cultures, the religions, the cults, the relations, the values, the political system that are based on completely different approaches. They are in conflict, and that is Noomachia. There is already a kind of the contradiction between Apollo and Dionysus. But with Cybele and Apollo, a contradiction reaches its utmost, the highest point, because there is a serious titanomachia or gigantomachia between two versions of the vision, because there are two logos fighting seriously. The logos, the titans, the autochtonic sons of Cybele try to storm the heaven, and the gods, Apollonian gods, try to defend it. And what is in a philosophical way? It is Democritus with his idea. It is purely Cybelian philosophy. It is Epicurus, and that is most important point in all that. That is our scientific, modern European science of modernity. That is purely Cybelian, and that is a kind of revenge of the logos of Cybele after the thousands of years of domination of Apollo with Dionysus. So there is a kind of Cybelian eschatology we are living in. So if we consider now not our tradition, spiritual tradition, cultural tradition, religious tradition, ethical tradition. But our scientific vision, it is purely atomistic, materialistic, progressist, and based on this symmetry from the bottom to the top. So that Sibylle doesn't belong to the past, to the archaic time. The logos of Sibylle is something we are dealing with. So we are, and this Sibyllean world vision we could find in as well in the ancient time, in our civilization, in other civilizations. There is not Sibyllean civilization. In any form of civilization, we could find all three logos, and they are fighting everywhere. And we are living inside of this Noomachia. It is not something that is completely, purely theoretical. We are living that, and this Noomachia is going through us, through our politics, through our culture, through our science, through our identity, through our culture. So, and that is kind of the end of the first lecture, and that is most important part and most important principles of what is Noomachia as a basis of the theory of multipolar world. We could make a kind of
yes.
or
maybe hoćeš prevedeš za bolje. Sad me zanima dve stvari. Da li ima noologija noopatologiju kao pravac?
Is there no pathology within knowledge?
No, because pathology, that is a kind of perversion of the norm, and noology considers three logos to be three norms. So we should, if we are Apollonian, we say everything except our vision is perversion or pathology. So it is not noology cannot say this logos is better than that. We try to describe the situation and describe not the norm and the pathology. We try that the noology is an idea to describe three contradictional norms and the process of their fight. So it should not be pathology.
Kad bi došlo do problema u Nusu, kako bi se rešavali ti problemi, zbog toga pitam za novu
The problem within Nous, how the problems will be solved.
So the problem in the Nous is obvious, because we are existing in the problem, because our human history, human philosophy is problem. But that is Nous. So they should not be solved, I think. This is a very interesting question. So the problem is, Nous is the problem. Not only there is the problem in Nous. Nous, the intellect is problematic. So Nous is the problem. We should not cure that. We shouldn't solve that. We shouldn't understand what we are. And we are the problem. So that is not some mind that is ill or sick. This mind is sick, it's a kind of sickness.
Maybe, but malo bolestan I puno bolestan ima.
Relative, maybe. But what is important, we need ethnology. We need to give the right to exist and to recognize to all three logos. To give the right to exist and not to cure, not to blame, but understand. And if we only understand, the richness of culture will appear before, not only in culture, in politics. We could decipher, we could interpret with these tools everything that is going on. We could open the journal or magazine and read the news and decipher, interpret that in this, what is the West, actual modern West, what do they want from Serbia, what they want from Russia, why they blame Putin. So everything is explained in this balance of noological process. And all this is obviously a reflection of the pathology and the conflict and the kind of problematism, and that is the life and that is the human. So cure human from artificial intelligence. And then the 10th lecture we will speak about artificial intelligence as the form to cure human from ourselves, from humanity. Yes.
И još jedno pitanje za Sibili. To je metafizički komponenta. Da, i onda to je možda neka dogradnja do monizma.
Манизма только материалистического. Манизма...
Доградня, неомонизм, нещо kao onologija.
Yes, it could be considered as a kind of monism, absolutely, but materialistic monism, very special. It is not the monism going from the God as the spiritual essence. It is a Spinoza monism, the monism and substantialism or Marxism. So that is a kind of self-developing matter. The mother is self-developing matter, and that is metaphysics. So that is purely immanent materialist metaphysics.
Auto-generating.
Auto-generate, absolutely.
Okay.
Self-constructive.
Self-constructive.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
Pitanje dalje neko?
Is there a possibility that the fourth logos exists, but it's not discovered?
No. There is. It is not just playing with numbers. So, for example, discover the logos of Dionysus was a kind of fate of all the philosophical existence of Nietzsche, for example. So it was a kind of the end of result of the biggest drama in the philosophical heart. So he has paid Nietzsche for discovering the logos of Dionysus, all the health, all the life. He has sacrificed for discovering on something like that all his being. So, and discovering of the logos, it is not only numbering 5th or 6th. No, it is something that changed everything completely. It is kind of revelation. So the idea that Nous is unique, it could be considered as a kind of common basis of three logos. But it is not fourth logos. It is kind of, I think that why we don't need three logos. Maybe I've started my book on the search of the dark logos with the premises, with the idea that two logos are enough, completely enough. We need to explore more second logos, and it will be enough. It will be completely rearrangement of all the philosophical understanding. But that is the kind of continuation of Heidegger, of phenomenology, of some special postmodernism. And I have discovered that is not enough. Not because I needed to imagine something new or add something new. It was necessary because it was a kind of empirical fact. So I have discovered this logos without thinking on him. It is absolutely not numerical play. That is very important. If we understand that, it will be really metaphysical revelation. When we continue to deal with that as a kind of intellectual game, for example, for that position was kind of relativism. So it is not of no use. I have remarked that in the philosophy and modern philosophy there is a kind of habit to try to imagine or construct new theory after the other without thinking sufficiently about existing one. So overpass Heidegger, overpass the other. So without thinking in depth to understand them. So I think, for example, post-structuralism. Post-structuralism is shallow. Structuralism is very, very important. So we should not try to it is Theologos, it's not my personal effort to create something original. Absolutely not. Not at all. Not at all. It's no way. I'm trying to stay as much as possible close to what is necessary. Not creating new entities, new methods. If some methods, for example, in geopolitics, I didn't imagine nothing. I have applied existing methods to Russian situation, and that was the kind of new basis of Eurasian geopolitics, with no imagining third, fourth, and all efforts to imagine beyond Earth and sea, the mountains, the intermediate regions. There are some. They are completely. They are pure games of mind, but sea power and land power are enough to explain everything in geopolitics. So I didn't imagine nothing in geopolitics. But here, dealing with two logos, only two logos, that was enough. I have come to the conclusion that in the reality they are not enough. And after that, everything that was already felt by Karl Kerényi, describing Dionysus in his book Dionysus, or Vyacheslav Ivanov, that Russian writer that has dedicated to Dionysianism, the book that was called Dionysianism and Pra-Dionysianism, that existed before. That was exactly the logos of Cybele. Pra-Dionysianism, pre-Dionysius was the logos of Cybele, but that was not named as such by Kerényi or Ivanov. But many Jung as well, or Gilbert Durand, they had intuition that is something outside that. And Bachofen we could as well find the differences between matriarchate and Dionysus. But in order to put that in this methodological, knowledgeable concept, that was the new step. But intuitions and preparations of the field, conceptual field, was made by the greatest master of myself, much greater than myself. So that I am trying to stay as much as possible close to what is necessary, and trying to follow the path of the great thinkers that already made always of everything. So it is not the kind of new artificial addition to the nomenclature of logos.
Da, baš lepo javlja se sad, ima čovjeka Bog, đavo, i javlja se ono posrednika, povezanost između ljudi kao intuicija, kao...
He said that between God and devil there is something which is in between, which is intuition.
So when we are speaking about God, devil, man, between, intuition, we are already operating in this logos. For example, yes, there is a kind of symmetry between God and devil in the Dionysian world, but there is no symmetry in Apollonian. There is God, and devil is something that almost doesn't matter in Plato. So in any, we are always, and we are living in the very schizophrenic situation with our culture and tradition is Apollonian and Dionysian, but our science and our politics and our technology is Sibelian. So, and that is a kind of our pathology. Our pathology is precisely not to give enough attention that we are living at the same time in the contradictory worlds, and these worlds are become more and more contradictory. So there is, for example, and now it is a kind of the final attack of Sibelian aspect against with feminism, with artificial intelligence, with democracy, with globalization, liberalism. Everything is a kind of new attack of titans of Sibelian society in order to purify the modernity from all the rest of tradition of Apollonian lovers. Now it is the fight against the man, not by the woman, but by this great mother, resurrected, almost already resurrected. The world government is not feminist government, but that is the government of titanic representatives of great mother. So, and they try to end with all the rests of the Apollonian world vision, with Christianity, with in the European tradition, with traditional family, with everything. So that is, so it is not abstract things, and we are speaking of. We are speaking about what is going on in our moment now, in the action, in your, in ours. So that is something that is decided in our heart and our mind. It is not something given, for example, some film that we are watching without. We are participating in this Noomachia, in this fight. We have decision. We can decide. We can choose. We can act. So so it is something that's something very very alive. This Noomachia.
We had the other day a Canadian Prime Minister who said to some question, someone asked him about mankind, and he said, no, we cannot say mankind anymore, we have to say people kind.
Mm-hmm.
So this is intervention in
Yes,
language.
yes, absolutely.
The level of thinking.
So, and we could understand the great changes in the modernity only with special tools. And Noomachia is one of the tools. I don't pretend it is the only one. But that is the part of that unites all the other aspects. That everything is here. This history of religions, philosophy, geopolitics, geostrategy, politology, force political theory, multipolar world, phenomenology, anthropology, sociology, ethnosociology as well. So we could make a kind of break.
Yes.
And after that we will have the second lecture.
Okay, 15 minuta.
Može jedno sliku sa profesorom.